Discover the miraculous teachings of Matthew, 7 divine insights that transform your sacred faith. In the 3rd year of Jehoiakim, the land of Judea was gripped by the weight of Roman occupation, and the people of Capernaum felt its oppressive hand. Along the shores of the Sea of Galilee, humble fishermen like Simon toiled under a sky heavy with expectation, laboring to provide for their families while grasping at the traditions of their faith. Simon, a devout Jew, found himself burdened by the strictures of the Mosaic law and the looming shadow of the Pharisees' relentless pursuit of righteousness. Each day, he cast his nets into the waters, hoping to pull forth fish and favor alike, all the while wrestling with the weight of his own inadequacies. One morning, as the sun began to paint the horizon with gold, whispers of a remarkable teacher named Jesus swept through the bustling town. People spoke of miracles that restored the sick and the lost, tales of a man who spoke with a compassion that transcended the very laws they adhered to. The air vibrated with excitement and curiosity, lighting a spark in Simon's heart. Drawn by an unseen force, he abandoned his nets and joined the throng gathering along the shore. As Jesus ascended a hillside, the crowd hushed in reverent anticipation. With every word he spoke, the burdens resting upon Simon's weary shoulders began to lift. Blessed are the poor in spirit, blessed are those who mourn, blessed are the peacemakers. Each declaration resonated with a truth he had longed for. His heart began to flourish as he absorbed the promise of the divine inheritance awaiting the meek. However, the deeper call of Jesus' teaching soon pierced through Simon's momentary joy. The teacher spoke of a righteousness that surpassed that of the scribes and Pharisees, urging the crowd to seek a transformative faith rather than mere legal adherence. A storm of emotions raged within Simon. The desire for such righteousness battled against his fears of inadequacy. How could he, a mere fisherman, grasp such lofty ideals? As Jesus spoke of forgiveness and mercy, Simon felt the grip of resentment he held against his neighbors squeeze tighter around his heart. Could he truly let go of the bitterness that had taken root in his spirit? The promise of divine provision beckoned him to relinquish his anxieties over providing for his family, yet doubt clawed at his resolve. With Jesus' teaching on prayer and the importance of seeking the kingdom first, Simon's heart raced. The tension between faith and sight twisted within him. Was it truly possible to trust in what he could not see? The parable of the wise and foolish builders struck a chord deep within him. What would it take to not only listen to these words but act upon them? Before we continue with this incredible biblical account, I want to make sure you don't miss any of these powerful scripture stories. Click the bell icon and select All Notifications. These biblical narratives have transformed countless lives throughout history. If God's word through this story is blessing you, please like and share with someone who needs to hear about God's faithfulness today. Tell me in the comments, which biblical story has most impacted your faith journey? I'm always amazed how God's word speaks to hearts across generations. Now let's continue with what the Lord did next. As the multitude began to disperse, Simon remained, grappling with a profound stirring in his soul. He stood on the precipice of a life-altering decision, searching for understanding. Would he find the courage to step out in faith and respond to the voice calling him toward a new path? The teachings of Jesus lingered in his heart, beckoning him to reclaim a faith not shackled by the burdens of the law, but alive with the promise of grace and truth. And so, he stood, waiting, longing to discover the resolution only God could provide. As the sun began to set over the tranquil waters of the Sea of Galilee, a sense of anticipation hung palpably in the air. Simon, his heart racing and spirit heavy, traced the outline of Jesus as he moved among the crowd, sharing wisdom that cut through the mundane like a knife. The essence of his words powerful, yet tender, was unearthing buried longings within Simon's very soul. Suddenly, the teacher paused, and his gaze fell directly upon Simon, piercing through the layers of doubt and insecurity that clung to him like wet garments. "Simon, son of John," Jesus called out, his voice resonating with an authority that seemed to command both compassion and fear. "If you seek the kingdom, you must be willing to let go of your nets." In that moment, the air grew thick with divine urgency. Simon felt the tumultuous war within him, the call to leave behind his familiar life and embrace something incomprehensibly greater than himself. Determined, he swallowed hard, grappling with what that abandonment would mean for his family, his identity, his very future. Jesus continued, "Come, follow me, and I will make you a fisher of men." The words ignited a flicker of hope mingled with intimidation deep within Simon's heart. A longing for purpose swelled as he listened intently. The possibility of transcending his fisherman's existence electrified his thoughts. But would he dare to respond to such an invitation? As the embers of doubt flickered, Simon mustered the courage to step forward. "Lord," he stammered, unsure yet resolute, "I have fished all night and caught nothing." It was a vulnerable admission, yet within it coursed the beginnings of faith. "Be not afraid, Simon," Jesus replied, his eyes filled with warmth. "Cast your net again, not for fish, but for souls." A current of excitement rippled through the gathering crowd, and Simon felt every heart beat in unity, sensing the divine promise encapsulated in these words. Drawing a deep breath, Simon nodded, surrendering his doubts as he cast his net into the water one last time. Instantly, a multitude of fish surged forth, filling his net to the point of nearly breaking. Gasps erupted around him as the amazement of the miracle took hold of the onlookers. The very fabric of what Simon believed was being reshaped within that moment, the supernatural entwining with the ordinary. Overwhelmed, he fell to his knees before Jesus, the salt of the sea mingling with his tears. "Depart from me, for I am a sinful man, O Lord," he cried, his heart laid bare in the presence of holiness. Jesus placed his hand on Simon's shoulder, extending grace in that sacred moment. "Fear not, for from now on you will catch men." He spoke with the same authority that had transformed the waters and commanded the fish, a promise of purpose steeped in hope. The crowd began to murmur in awe, the grace of this man igniting a fire of belief. Simon rose to his feet, full of trembling resolve, as his eyes met those of Jesus, now filled with a clarity he had never known. In that pivotal moment, the call of discipleship beckoned him into the depths of faith, and he began to ponder the vast expanse of what following Jesus might mean. As shadows lengthened and the waters shimmered in twilight, Simon realized he was but at the beginning of a profound journey. Yet as Simon followed Jesus, a question lingered in his heart. What awaited him in this new life? The thought of the path ahead felt heavy with both promise and peril, a divine mystery waiting to unfold. And so, with the sound of the sea behind him and a flickering flame of faith within, Simon embarked into the horizon where God's sovereign plan would soon reveal its glory, transforming the mundane into the miraculous. As dawn broke over the Sea of Galilee, the echoes of Jesus' call resonated within Simon's heart. The early light danced upon the waters, illuminating not just the fishing boats but also the paths yet to be walked. In the shadows behind him, the murmurs of the crowd trickled away as Jesus beckoned Simon to join him. "Come, follow me," Jesus reiterated, an invitation entwined with authority. With each step, Simon felt the weight of his former life slip away, replaced by the thrill of uncertainty. The sandy shore felt firm beneath his feet, yet the ground beneath his soul wavered in the face of destiny. As they walked, Simon's fellow fishermen, James and John, observed from a distance. Their eyes reflected astonishment and concern, caught between the familiarity of their daily toil and the allure of the unknown pathway unfolding before them. Jesus turned to them, as if sensing their apprehension. "What will it profit a man to gain the whole world and lose his own soul?" he inquired gently. Stirred by such wisdom, Simon felt the powerful invitation not just for himself but for all who might hear the call. This was not merely about leaving nets behind, it was a summons to a deeper understanding of eternal truths and divine purpose. Yet still, a question nagged within him. Would they see the urgency in the Master's message? Within the days that followed, Jesus journeyed through towns and villages, spreading the good news of the kingdom. Simon stood at his side, witnessing miracles that challenged the very fabric of reality. The blind saw, the lame walked, and the diseased were healed, all at the sound of his voice. With every miracle, Simon's faith grew stronger, yet the root of doubt tangled within him. One fateful afternoon, as they gathered upon a hill overlooking the sea, Jesus turned to his disciples. "Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven." His voice was resolute, yet filled with compassion. With each beatitude, Simon felt a shaking within his spirit while the crowd listened, rapt and hungry for truth. "Blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted," Jesus continued, and Simon glanced around at the faces illuminated by the glow of hope. Could it be that even amid their struggles, a deeper blessing awaited? "When they revile and persecute you," Jesus taught, "rejoice and be exceedingly glad, for great is your reward in heaven." The intention of his words resonated deeply within Simon. He began to understand that his journey would be laden with trials, yet boundless grace lay ahead. As Jesus spoke, his presence radiated the very essence of divine authority and love. The heart of the people hungered, recognizing that they were hearing more than mere teachings, they were receiving life itself. In that moment, Simon felt a deep stirring, a call not merely to follow but to become a vessel for this transformative truth. Later that evening, while they rested by the fireside, Simon wrestled with pressing thoughts. "Lord," he asked quietly, "what does it mean to carry such a weight of truth? Can we ever be worthy of this calling?" Jesus regarded him with a knowing smile. "Simon, all things are possible for the one who believes." His eyes sparkled with a promise that transcended Simon's fears. In the depths of that assurance, another question arose: what would be required of him to fulfill the promise of discipleship? As the flames danced, casting flickering shadows, Simon felt the challenge of a path that remained shrouded in mystery, for within the heart of this new endeavor lay both promise and peril, each step dictated by faith's resolve, each moment a brush with eternity. Simon understood that what lay ahead was intricately woven into God's sovereign plan, yet the full tapestry was yet to be unveiled. As night fell and the stars began to twinkle in the sky, Simon gazed upward, a myriad of questions swirling in his mind. What awaited them on this journey of faith? The answer remained hidden, yet unmistakably close, beckoning him to step further into the unfolding narrative of God's redemption, the mysteries yet to be revealed in the name of the one who called him into the light. As the days slipped by, the sun rose higher over Galilee, casting a golden hue across the land. Jesus continued to reveal the depths of his teaching. The air thrummed with anticipation as the crowds grew ever larger. They came from distant villages, drawn by the promise of hope and healing, flocking to hear the words of the one who spoke with authority. One day, as Simon stood at the edge of the multitude, he witnessed a woman press through the throng with desperation etched upon her face. She had suffered for 12 long years, and the weight of her affliction had driven her to the fringes of society. As she reached out to touch the hem of Jesus' garment, Simon held his breath, understanding that in this moment, faith intertwined with desperation could yield the miraculous. In an instant, the healing power flowed from Jesus. "Who touched me?" he asked, halting the procession with a question that struck the hearts of many, including Simon's own. His disciples exchanged puzzled glances, for the throng pressed against him, all seeking to be near, but Simon sensed the gravity in Jesus' tone, a heartbeat of divine purpose that went beyond mere inquiry. The woman, trembling and fearful, came forward. "It was I, Lord," she confessed, her voice barely above a whisper. "Daughter," Jesus spoke with tender authority, "your faith has made you well. Go in peace and be healed of your affliction." The crowd gasped, and an electric murmur rippled through them. In this act of healing, Simon saw what it truly meant to believe, not merely to witness miracles, but to actively engage in faith that brings about transformation. Days turned into weeks, and with each passing moment, Simon's heart wrestled with the enormity of the calling laid before him. The days were filled with teachings and miracles, but the nights brought profound conversations around the fire. One night, as dusk cloaked the hills, Jesus shared with them the parables of the kingdom. "The kingdom of heaven is like a treasure hidden in a field," he explained, "which a man found and covered up. Then in his joy he goes and sells all that he has and buys that field." As Jesus spoke, Simon felt like he was standing before his own hidden treasure, one that required sacrifice but promised eternal reward. "Lord," Simon interrupted, emboldened, "what can we do to inherit this treasure?" "To follow me," Jesus replied simply, "is to lay down your life. For whoever would save his life will lose it, but whoever loses his life for my sake will find it." Simon's heart trembled at the enormity of such words as the flickering fire illuminated the resolve upon Jesus' face. then the Lord spoke of mustard seeds and leaven, sharing how small acts of faith can yield a bountiful harvest. Yet amid the teachings of hope and the promise of salvation, Simon sensed a shadow lurking at the edges of their journey. There were whispers of Pharisees and their plots growing louder, a storm brewing against the peace that Jesus proclaimed. One evening, as Simon's eyes lingered on the horizon, he questioned Jesus, "Is the cost of discipleship really our very lives? How do we prepare for what lies ahead?" With eyes filled with compassion, Jesus assured him, "In this world, you will have trouble, but take heart, I have overcome the world." Those words were as fierce as they were comforting, igniting a fire of conviction in Simon's heart. Yet as they prepared to set forth into the towns where darkness lay heavy, uncertainty gripped Simon anew. What trials lay ahead? What sacrifices might be demanded of them? In this time of reflection and whispered fears, Simon looked back at the crowd they had gathered. All waited in expectant silence, yearning for truth and healing. And as Simon turned, he felt a deeper awareness wash over him, a glimpse of God's sovereign plan unfurling, where every moment of despair could shift into a scene of divine grace. But even as he caught sight of this promise, a heavy question loomed large: were they ready to walk the path that would lead them to the heart of God's ultimate design? The journey was just beginning, and the depths of divine revelation were yet to unfold, leading them closer to the very essence of their calling. As the sun dipped low on the horizon, painting the sky with hues of orange and deep purple, Jesus commanded attention once more. The multitude, eager and expectant, crowded around him on the grassy slope by the Sea of Galilee. His eyes, filled with compassion, surveyed their faces, reflecting hope and yearning. "Behold," Jesus began, his voice resonating across the assembled throng, "the kingdom of heaven has drawn near." A hush fell over the crowd, the air thick with anticipation as he continued, "It is like a great banquet, where many are invited, yet few choose to enter." Among the listeners, Simon leaned closer, hungry for understanding. Jesus' words were a call to action, a proclamation that tugged at the strings of his heart. "Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they shall be satisfied," he declared, and Simon felt the weight of those words like an echo in his soul. In the distance, a figure emerged, beaten and weary, crawling toward the gathering. The crowd parted, revealing a man afflicted by leprosy, shunned by society for his ailment. Gasps arose around Simon as the man fell before Jesus, desperation in his eyes. "Lord, if you will, you can make me clean." Jesus knelt down, reaching out his hand, and without hesitation said, "I will, be clean." An instant later, the man's skin transformed, made whole anew. The crowd erupted in awe, and Simon's heart raced as he witnessed not only a miracle but also the overflowing compassion of his master. Days moved on, with Jesus teaching in parables, weaving the mysteries of heaven and earth. A sower went out to sow his seeds, he spoke, inviting Simon into the narrative. Some fell on the path, others on rocky ground, some among thorns, and others on good soil. Simon listened intently, pondering where his own heart lay within that tale. Jesus always turned the ordinary into the extraordinary, revealing profound truths through common experiences. On another occasion, as evening fell, Jesus beckoned Simon and the others to go with him across the sea. The gentle lap of the waves urged them forward, yet a storm brewed ominously on the horizon. The winds wailed and the waters surged as they navigated the darkened sea, fear gripping the hearts of the disciples. "Master, we are perishing." Simon cried out, his voice trembling with desperation. "Why are you afraid, O you of little faith?" came the response from Jesus, who stood unshaken amid the tempest. His gaze never left Simon, eyes filled with authority. "Peace! Be still." And at once, the wind ceased, and the sea became calm. The miraculous moment etched itself upon Simon's heart, a vivid reminder of whom they followed. Simon cast a glance at his companions, their breaths hung in disbelief, faces illuminated by the stars above. Their journey was much more than they could grasp. "Truly, you are the Son of God," Simon exclaimed, the truth breaking forth from his spirit. As they moved toward the shores anew, Jesus regarded Simon, speaking words that seared into his very being. there will be more signs and wonders, for greater things await those who will believe. Then he paused, scanning the horizon where unseen trials awaited. But who will remain steadfast when the time comes? In this tension of promise and peril, Simon stood at a crossroads. The depths of this calling stretched far beyond earthly expectations. And as the waves lapped softly on the shore, a divine mystery beckoned, a whisper from heaven promising the unfolding of God's sovereign plan. Prepare your hearts, for the greatest journey has yet to begin. As dawn broke over the Sea of Galilee, its rays glimmered upon the water, illuminating the faces of those who gathered once more to hear the words of Jesus. The multitude had grown, drawn by the fervor of his teaching and the reports of his miraculous deeds. Among them stood Simon, his heart still echoing with the truth of Jesus' declaration, "Blessed are those who are persecuted for righteousness' sake, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven." The air was charged with expectancy as Jesus began to teach again. "You are the salt of the earth," he said, his voice steady, compelling every listener to consider their role in the world. "But if salt loses its taste, how shall its saltiness be restored? It is no longer good for anything, except to be thrown out and trampled underfoot." Simon pondered deeply upon these words, realizing the weight of his discipleship, the call to preserve and flavor the world with the truth of God's love. As the day wore on, Jesus continued, "You are the light of the world. A city set on a hill cannot be hidden." His eyes sparkled with fervor as he concluded, "Let your light shine before others, so that they may see your good works and give glory to your Father who is in heaven." The crowd marveled, but Simon felt an inward stirring, a challenge to live out that light amidst the shadows that lingered in their paths. How would he, a simple fisherman, illuminate the dark corners of this world? Later, as they rested, a group of scribes approached, their expressions hard and judgmental. "Teacher," one of them asked, "by what authority do you do these things?" Simon felt a tightening in his chest, sensing the animosity, and how heavily the air was laden with their skepticism. Jesus spoke boldly, "I will ask you one question, answer me, and I will tell you by what authority I do these things. The baptism of John, was it from heaven or from man?" The scribes huddled together, whispering amongst themselves. Realizing they could not answer without incriminating their own position, they replied to Jesus, "We do not know." "Neither will I tell you by what authority I do these things," Jesus proclaimed, his words echoing with power. Simon's spirit stirred with admiration and conviction. What boldness! Here, in the face of opposition, Jesus displayed unwavering confidence. As they made their way to a nearby village, a man approached with a withered hand. The crowd gasped, watching intently as Jesus questioned the Pharisees. "Is it lawful to heal on the Sabbath?" They remained silent, unwilling to admit the compassion of God trumps the rigidity of tradition. "Stretch out your hand," Jesus commanded, and the man obeyed, his hand restored. Simon watched in awe as the crowd erupted in astonishment. Yet the Pharisees turned away, anger and envy churning within them. The weight of Jesus' heart for the unfit and the broken enveloped Simon, as Jesus turned his gaze upon him. "Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth," he had once proclaimed, and in this moment, Simon understood that it was the humble heart that God desired. As the day waned, Jesus withdrew to pray on the mountainside, the disciples gathered, a mix of wonder and confusion filling their hearts. The parables of the kingdom rang in their minds, the mystery deepening. "Who among us will lead when he is gone?" Simon whispered among them, the burden of their mission growing heavier. But Jesus' promise echoed, "Prepare your hearts, for the greatest journey has yet to begin," compelling Simon to lean into the uncertainty, trusting in the unfolding of divine destiny. Little did they know, a storm greater than any ocean lay ahead. The path to glory would be fraught with trials, but within those trials would be revealed God's sovereign plan, the very foundation of faith upon which the world would be transformed. As night began to settle upon the land, the disciples nestled among the rocks, weary yet alive with thoughts of the day's events. The whispers of the crowd still echoed in their ears, and the miracles of Jesus remained vivid in their minds. Simon turned to his companions, "What will become of us as we walk this path he has set before us? Will we be able to endure?" Before they could ponder this further, the air trembled with an unseen force, and Simon felt a sudden charge of expectation surge within him. Jesus descended from the mount, his silhouette framed by the glimmering stars above. Even in the dim light, his presence was unmistakable, radiant and compelling. "I tell you," Jesus began, "the kingdom of heaven is like a treasure hidden in a field, which a man found and covered up. Then in his joy, he goes and sells all that he has and buys that field." His words resonated deeply, igniting a yearning in the hearts of all who listened. "Lord," Peter interjected, a note of urgency in his voice, "how can we recognize this treasure? How can we, simple men, claim a part of this kingdom?" Jesus smiled gently, his eyes reflecting infinite grace. "The kingdom is among you, revealed in meekness and humility, in acts of love and mercy. For those who seek with a pure heart shall find it," he recounted. Then, turning his attention to a growing crowd forming anew, he spoke, "The kingdom is like a merchant in search of fine pearls, who, upon finding one of great value, went and sold all he had and bought it." There was a weight of divine purpose in his tone, drawing them in with a promise of hope. In the distance, Simon gazed at the horizon where the land met the sky, uncertainty washing over him. His heart wrestled with the truth of Jesus' teachings, yet a lightness began to rise within him. He understood now that the cost of discipleship required total surrender. In that surrender lay the ultimate freedom. As the night deepened, Jesus continued, recounting parables that unveiled the nature of the Father's heart for his children. "No one can enter the kingdom of God unless he is born again," he declared, leaving the crowd in wonder. The profound mystery of spiritual rebirth hovered among them, promising renewal and restoration. Amidst the awe, a voice rose from the crowd. A man with a noble spirit approached, his heart heavy with pride yet seeking understanding. "Teacher, why do you speak in parables? Why conceal the truth?" Jesus returned his gaze, an unyielding look of compassion in his eyes. "To you it has been given to know the secrets of the kingdom of heaven, but to them, it has not been given. For whoever has, to him more will be given, but whoever does not have, even what he thinks he has will be taken away." Each word pierced through the night, revealing God's divine justice. As the hours passed, Simon's spirit stirred, remembering the previous call to faith and the challenges ahead. Every parable unveiled another layer of the profound mystery life held for those who chose to follow Jesus. In that moment, Simon felt an awakening. Each lesson was not merely instruction, it was a revelation of the very character of God, calling the weary and broken to the banquet of hope. Yet, even as the light of understanding dawned, Jesus' expression grew somber. "Do not be afraid, for the path will be fraught with trials. But remember, I am sending you as sheep in the midst of wolves. Therefore be wise as serpents and innocent as doves." Fear gripped Simon's heart anew, but alongside fear, he felt courage rising, the promise of God's presence enveloping him. Days of testing would soon follow, each moment unfolding a tapestry of divine purpose beyond their comprehension. For it was in the depths of darkness that the brilliance of the light would shine more brightly. As Jesus fell silent, the crowd sat in holy anticipation, their spirits intertwined in divine suspense. Little did they realize, the plans laid before them were far grander than mere miracles or teachings. The very foundations of a new covenant were about to be established, one that would alter the course of history itself. As dawn approached, the first rays of light broke over the horizon, casting a golden hue upon the land. The disciples rose, weary yet invigorated by the teachings of Jesus. Each of them felt a stirring within their hearts, as though the breath of the Almighty had awakened their very souls. Simon turned to his brethren, "Let us not forget the lessons of the night. The King calls us to be partakers of his kingdom." Jesus stood among them, watching as the sun began to illuminate the path ahead. With an enduring love in his gaze, he beckoned the disciples closer. "Today, I will reveal more mysteries of the kingdom. Gather around, for the heart of my message shall bring forth hope." A hush fell over the group as they encircled him, their spirits alight with expectation. "Hear this," Jesus began, "the kingdom of heaven is like a net cast into the sea, gathering fish of every kind. When it was full, men drew it ashore and sat down, and they collected the good into vessels but threw away the bad. So it will be at the end of the age, he proclaimed with a voice that resonated with authority, compelling their attention. Lord, James queried, his brow furrowed in thought, what does this say about our purpose? What is the meaning behind the good and the bad? Jesus looked upon them with tender compassion. The angels will come forth and separate the wicked from the righteous, and cast them into the furnace of fire. In that day, there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. His words carried weight, instilling both a sense of urgency and solemnity. In that moment, the all-encompassing reminder of the divine calling surged through Simon. He felt the weight of responsibility resting upon him and his companions. It was clear they were to be fishermen of men, sharing the truth of the gospel, beckoning others into the embrace of grace. Have you understood all these things? Jesus asked, breaking through their contemplation. The disciples nodded, though uncertain, recognizing the depth of the truths presented. Therefore every scribe trained for the kingdom of heaven is like a master of a house, who brings out of his treasure what is new and what is old. The dawn light sparkled in their eyes as they wrestled with the implications of these profound teachings, each story a divine revelation, unveiling God's character toward his creation. They understood that the message of the kingdom was one of balance, where grace triumphed over judgment, offering salvation to those who believed. As the sun climbed higher, a sudden tension rippled through the atmosphere, for a rumble of footsteps approached. The disciples turned to see a band of men, stern-faced and bearing the authority of the temple. These were Pharisees, whose hearts were hardened against the very truth that stirred among them. Teacher, one of them called, thrusting his chin upward. Your teachings are peculiar. With what authority do you say these things? What sign will you show us? Jesus regarded them with an unwavering gaze, sorrow mingled with resoluteness. An evil and adulterous generation seeks for a sign, but no sign will be given to it except the sign of Jonah the prophet. For just as Jonah was 3 days and 3 nights in the belly of the great fish, so will the Son of Man be 3 days and 3 nights in the heart of the earth. The gravity of his words fell heavily upon the listeners. A shudder of realization coursed through the disciples, grasping the foretelling of his death and resurrection, a sacrifice foretold for the redemption of humanity. As the sun hung high, illuminating the path ahead, Jesus turned to the disciples, his expression resolute yet full of grace. The kingdom of heaven is at hand, and the message you carry will challenge the hearts of many. Prepare yourselves, for the winds of change draw near. And with those words, a divine mystery lingered in the air, a reminder that the true revelation of God's plan was still unfolding, inviting them into a deeper understanding of his sovereign purpose in the salvation of mankind. As the sun continued its ascent, the shadows cast by the ancient olive trees grew shorter, and the sounds of morning reached a crescendo. The disciples found their hearts heavy with unease at the words of Jesus. A tremor of anticipation coursed through the group, fueled by the significance of his teachings and the ominous presence of the Pharisees, and turning to them, Jesus said, "Do you not perceive that the kingdom of heaven is to be embraced with childlike faith? For the least among you shall be greatest in the kingdom. Let not the wisdom of this world cloud your understanding. The meek shall inherit the earth, and those who hunger and thirst for righteousness shall be filled." Peter, with all his zeal, spoke up, "Lord, how shall we be as children, when the leaders of our people burden us with their traditions?" Jesus' gaze softened as he replied, "It is the humble heart that shall enter the kingdom. When you approach with simplicity and trust, you reflect the very nature of our Father in heaven. Remember, even the sparrows are cared for, so much more shall you be defended." The disciples murmured among themselves, the weight of his counsel sinking deep into their spirits. In that moment, a realization washed over Simon: the kingdom was indeed for the broken, for the lowly, for those cast aside by society's standards. Then Jesus continued, "Blessed are you when others revile you and persecute you and utter all kinds of evil against you falsely on my account. Rejoice and be glad, for your reward is great in heaven, for so they persecuted the prophets who were before you." His voice rang clear, enveloping them with profound hope and challenging their earthly perceptions of success. While the air was thick with tension from the Pharisees, one among them, a Pharisee named Nicodemus, began to ponder. Stepping forward, he questioned Jesus, "Rabbi, how can a man be born again when he is old? Can he enter a second time into his mother's womb and be born?" Jesus looked upon him with piercing yet compassionate eyes. "Truly, truly, I say to you, unless one is born of water and the Spirit, he cannot enter the kingdom of God." The weight of his response penetrated the hearts of those listening. It was a call to transformation, the very heart of the gospel entrusted to them. The sun illuminated the path behind them, while the path before remained shrouded in mystery. Jesus began to speak of mercy and love, urging them to love their enemies and pray for those who persecute them. "In this way, you shall be the children of your Father who is in heaven," he proclaimed. With each passing moment, the understanding of the kingdom deepened. The disciples envisioned a realm of inexhaustible grace, marked by love rather than law, where the heart of God beats in rhythm with the cries of his creation. Yet, as the day wore on, the tension grew palpable. The Pharisees, emboldened by their perceived authority, conferred amongst themselves, plotting in their hearts how they might ensnare Jesus with words. They could not fathom the depth of the truths he expressed, nor the grace he extended. As Jesus concluded his discourse, he raised his eyes to the heavens, as if seeking divine guidance. "You shall be witnesses of all I have shared with you," he decreed solemnly. "But remember, to whom much is given, much will be required. Prepare your hearts, for I lay before you the path of life, and within it lies the fullness of the Father's promise." In this sacred moment, a lingering question remained, echoing in the hearts of the disciples: what did it truly mean to enter the kingdom of heaven? And as they looked upon their teacher, the weight of this divine mystery enveloped them, stirring excitement and uncertainty, an unfolding revelation of God's sovereign plan yet to come. As the sun began to set and the golden light cast long shadows across the rocky landscape of Galilee, Simon found himself in a quiet moment of reflection, pondering the profound journey that lay ahead. Each teaching from Jesus, each miracle witnessed, was not merely an event, it was a revelation of the heart of God, beckoning him to deeper faith and commitment. The resonance of Jesus' promise echoed in his heart: "You are a fisher of men," and with it came both urgency and a trembling anticipation. Days turned into nights filled with confounding teachings of love, mercy, and the nature of the kingdom. Yet, amid the joy of the miraculous and the depth of the truth, a storm brewed on the horizon, not just of the skies, but within the hearts of many who rose against the radical love and grace that Jesus embodied. Apostles gathered as Jesus stood amidst them, his gaze piercing as he spoke words that would forever mark their souls. "Whoever wishes to be great among you must be your servant," he declared, calling all to relinquish pride for humility, division for unity. Simon felt the truth of those words sink deeply within him. He had left his nets behind, yet the call was more than a transition of vocation, it was the laying down of self for the sake of others, transforming the very heart of his disciples' journey. As weeks passed, the crowd knew of his message, yet it grew burdensome to the religious elite, who felt threatened by his radical grace. On one particular evening, Simon witnessed the piercing rebuke of Pharisees as they challenged Jesus. Their empty traditions and man-made laws were eclipsed by the liberating power Christ offered. In the face of opposition, Jesus held firm, illuminating the heart of God's purpose, a kingdom not rooted in public perception or outward appearances but in the transformative power of love and truth. Simon's awe turned to resolve as, together with the other disciples, he felt fortified against the coming trials. Then came the climactic moment, the Last Supper. In an upper room, amid deep tension and a bittersweet camaraderie, Jesus broke bread and poured wine, sharing with them the profound mystery of the new covenant. "This is my body, given for you, this cup is the new covenant in my blood." His voice trembled with majesty and sorrow, knowing the darkness that loomed. Simon, overwhelmed by the gravity of it all, felt the very depths of his faith called into question. How could he fathom the depths of such love, let alone carry the weight of this calling? As they departed, they walked toward Gethsemane, the air thick with unspoken fears, for Simon knew that something monumental awaited. The night shrouded them in profound uncertain anticipation as Jesus fell to his knees in prayer. Simon, along with the others, wrestled with their emotions. Fear, anger, and a flicker of faith coalesced into prayer. Yet fatigue overcame Simon, and he succumbed to sleep, only to awaken to the sound of earnest cries and departing footsteps. Betrayed by a kiss, Jesus was taken away. Simon's heart twisted in anguish as he realized the enormity of what was unfolding. Fear gripped him as the high priests delivered false charges, and the disciples scattered like sheep without a shepherd. In that moment of darkness, Simon's resolve began to crack, yet, even amid despair, God's sovereign plan continued to unfold. As Jesus stood before those who sought to condemn him, his courage shone like the morning star. "Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do," he prayed, his compassion unyielding even in the face of their enmity. These words ignited something within Simon, a reminder that faith is often veiled in trials, and the depth of love lies not in absence of suffering, but through it. When the darkest hour came, and the veil tore in the temple at the moment of his death, the earth trembled in recognition of divinity. The centurion watching declared, "Truly this was the Son of God." In those agonizing hours, hope seemed lost, yet, unbeknownst to Simon, the grave was but a doorway. The fulfilling of God's promise was at hand. 3 days passed in restless silence, but on the dawn of the third day, an earthquake shattered despair as angels burst forth to announce to the grieving Marys, "He is not here, he is risen." The stone rolled away, unleashed a flood of hope, and Simon, heart pounding, raced to the tomb. Upon arrival, he found the cloth lying neatly by itself. In that moment, faith ignited like wildfire, for the prophecies were fulfilled, and death was defeated. Jesus reunited with his disciples, and as he appeared among them, his very presence transformed their grief into joy. "Peace be with you," he spoke, and at the sound of his voice, their scattered hearts unified as one. In that sacred exchange, he breathed the Holy Spirit upon them, irrevocably empowering them to carry the message of hope into the world. From that moment forward, Simon, the once anxious fisherman, rose with fervent purpose, emboldened to proclaim the gospel of Jesus Christ. His heart now a vessel of grace, he traversed lands unknown despite obstacles, bearing witness to the love that shattered chains and transformed lives. The world would not know what hid it, for the kingdom had arrived, and with it, the promise of redemption. Today, fellow believer, this same call resounds, beckoning you to take hold of the hope and purpose God has set before you. Step into the light, for he has risen and invites you to be a part of his great and sovereign plan. If you have felt the stirring of his call and desire to know more, don't wait even one more second. You need to subscribe now to stay connected to God's Word and these powerful biblical stories that change lives. Leave a like now to help spread God's truth through the algorithm, and comment below with your reflections. How has this biblical testimony affected your faith? Let your voice join the chorus of believers seeking his light. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to hear the truth of his love. This is the moment to help spread biblical truth together.